So very quickly, my name is Kunal Nandwani. I am one of the co-author at Earther.org. Earther is basically a crowdsourced platform which is trying to solve the most sustainability problems that we all face in a very scalable way. That's the attempt we are doing. Earther.org is 3 years old non-profit organization. In Earther, if you have to simplify and try to understand about Earther and the crowdsourcing behind, think of it like Wikipedia or Quora, where you have communities asking questions, answering questions, or discussing problems. So think of it like Quora meets Kickstarter. Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform that funds entrepreneurs. So the core idea behind is that crowd brings a problem. All of us together can bring some problems on the platform. Some of us may have solutions for it. Crowd brings a solution. Some of us may be looking for entrepreneurial ideas, inspiring ideas that we want to work on, the businesses we may want to build. We believe that is a great solution for solving the sustainability problems because the governments and corporates are not doing enough. They are unlikely to be able to do enough. So the entrepreneurs who start with a blank sheet, who start with no baggage, can probably pick and be inspired by some of these solutions, and then crowd itself can fund it. All of us can come together and hopefully consider funding those. So Earther is an attempt in building the awareness of these problems. Firstly, becoming aware is very important. Then trying to find solutions by other brains, other minds coming together. Then finding entrepreneurs who can build businesses on top of those as social businesses in grand scheme of things. And then funding them. That's what Earther is about. We would encourage you to connect with us on Earther.org or at social media and other platforms online. And now, having introduced Earther, let me introduce the panelists. So Sameer Guglani, who's a dear friend of mine, I don't think I can do justice in giving his introduction, but very briefly, he's one of the most well-known, prominent angel investors who's invested in more than hundreds of companies, startups, starting in the previous decade before even angel investing was known in India and in the world and in Chandigarh Tri-City for that matter. And he's moved on from that. His accelerator, Morpheus gang, you might have heard of, or Morpheus Accelerator, might have heard of, that has impacted many startups, many entrepreneurs, and has created some of the biggest unicorns that we all hear about today. We'll not get into those names, but he's a very well prominent startup mentor and investor. And more importantly, for today's talk, Sameer has also evolved into a lot of spiritual, philosophical learnings about humans, what drives us, how we are structured, what we are meant, what we are doing, why we are doing what we are meant to do, etc. So he'll help bring a very fresh perspective on the panel. And I'm just checking if my second panelist, Vivek, has joined. He's still trying to join in. So give it a minute. So Vivek will join shortly, hopefully. I'll just share his... just hold on, guys, 1 second, okay? Sorry for this inconvenience. That's brief about the talk. Vivek, who will join us shortly, I will happily introduce him in the meanwhile, hoping he can get the connectivity problem sorted. So Vivek is an engineer and then IAS officer, ex-IAS officer. He quit from the service after a few decades of service, and he's become a very philosophical, motivational speaker right now. Vivek Atray, if you are from Chandigarh Tri-City or if you've attended some of his past sessions, you may be aware of him. Very prominent person in the Tri-City and other North India's ecosystem. So he would be joining us shortly. Okay. So in the interest of time, we'll get started. So I want to start by asking Sameer, what is the sustainability problem? What is the unsustainability problem that we want to cover here or that we are facing? Let's try and define it first. So Vivek has joined. Hi Vivek, welcome. Can you hear us?
Hi, I had some connection problems. Now I'm in.
Great. Hi Vivek, welcome. So Vivek, hi. So in the interest of time, I've done your introduction. Assume everyone knows about you very briefly. And to my right is Samir Guglani, whom you may or may not have met in the past, but being a prominent speaker and and my dear friend and a very spiritual, on a spiritual journey in learning and discovering ourselves, as many of us are. So Vivek, I introduced Eartha. I've introduced both of you, and now I was just starting with the first question. Yeah, so I'm just starting with the first question, which I'm posing to Samir for now for the continuity of the flow. What is what is the sustainability problem? What is unsustainable? How do we look at it? I'm sure there are many ways to look at it, from just looking at the plastic waste outside our house or a garbage problem to just thinking about the capitalism as a whole, where you have 1% people owning more than 90% of the wealth, let's say, to many other things. There are some sustainability challenges when we talk about, but it's a very, very wide topic and depends how you look at it. So I'd like to start with Samir. If you want to go first, Samir, and talk about what is unsustainability for you and how did we get here?
Yeah, sure. Let me, I'm just trying to just say, let's take a simple example, right? Let's say I live in a house and I have a tank, on my top of my house, which has water in it, right? And it is further connected to another supply, right? But there is no further supply. So there is like one tank in my house, and my city has, assume, a very large tank, right? So as a city, we consume a certain amount of water every day. But the water which is coming into the larger supply, so basically, if what we consume every day is more than is being refilled, right? That means the level of water available is dropping by the day. But it is possible that we might use only 100 liter a day, and the tank might have 10 lakh liters, and the deficit might be just 10 liters per day in the beginning. So we are using 110 liters, the incoming is 100 liters. So in the beginning, and we've just discovered water, right? In the beginning, it is okay. Everybody is learning to use water. They are using water. Basically to get perspective that when will we run out of 10 lakh liter water, very difficult, right? So I think what we are calling unsustainability, so this is also technically unsustainable, right? One day, if we don't fix our ways, we will be using. So what is happening is the amount of water being used per day is increasing, because we are learning how to use water. So now I'm using water as a proxy for all the non-renewable renewable resources, right? So we are using more and water every day because we are learning to use more water for more things. We obviously don't care so much to conserve water. There is so much water available, and population is increasing, so on and so forth, right? So these problems which you call unsustainability through petrol, for example, right? So now petrol as a fuel or coal as a fuel, they were invented or discovered hundreds of years ago, and in those days we were using 100 kgs of coal or petrol, and we have lakhs of kgs, right? So in those days, it was a genuine upgrade for humanity to have access to such technologies, which led to problems of industrial, right? But what has happened is that basically we haven't paid attention to the difference and the negativity which is happening, and hence as the use and population and consumerism has exploded, right? The same things which were probably very good for humanity to have are becoming problems. Like if you see in our own lifetime, we saw, these things come in, right? Now a phone like this is consumes way more energy to make and use as compared to the phones which we use, right? So we were all very happy to have them. But now we have so much of them, and I don't know how many people know that even when you use internet, it has a carbon footprint, right? Like if you watch Netflix for 1 hour, it is using energy at a certain level which we may not even know. So one way we celebrate data, it is also true that data is democratizing our life, but at the same time, so I think I just want to put a perspective, like sometimes we don't understand, so I think what is happening is that we are using more and more, but we are not resetting the technologies. Maybe some of those technologies are outdated, we need to reset them or go back to their core, and whatever 100 years ago a motor was designed, we need to retrofit it in today's context so that our resources can last much longer. So that's to me some of the ideas of sustainability or what we call unsustainability.
Thanks. So I think if I can try to sum it up, I think what Samir is trying to say is that clearly we all, in our micro perspectives, we feel that what we are using, what we are consuming, we may or may not be aware how much unsustainability challenge it causes to a whole. If you take a step back and zoom out and see from the whole humanity or the whole planet or the limited resources perspective, and we feel some of the resources are not unlimited. I mean, we feel they are unlimited. Think about air, food, water. We feel that we can have as much as we want, but reality is there is some limitation somewhere, and sooner or later we do strike it. And some of the things that make sense at some point in time, let's say a few decades ago, plastic made sense. It was a very convenient, small use thing. But nobody anticipated that there would be billions of plastic packaging every month, every year for everything that we do. It was not meant and designed for that, right? So that's what leads to unsustainability, and what we probably need to think about and reset and come up with the, we just need to track every invention, how it goes. They make sense at some price point, in some context, in some time frame, but they don't always work, and we just keep taking it for granted without being aware how they're harming us. So that's maybe just an attempt from my side. So Vivek, open to you. Do you want to add on this? What is unsustainability for you? What are the sustainability challenges that we face?
Yes, yes, very interesting discussion, Kunal and Samir. I think you've set the ball rolling very well. I think modern life is such that we utilize objects and energy in a manner that it will definitely dent the sustainability of the planet. What happens is that a caveman was basically denting the planet by burning wood, right? And the smoke was probably polluting the atmosphere to about a micro percent of what we are doing today. Now, what is happening today is, like Samir very rightly says, just by using something, you are adding to the burden on the planet. And then why don't we talk about population itself? I mean, there is nobody who's talking about population today. India has definitely stopped talking about population and given up. And there was a time when I don't want to repeat that, talk about that era too much, but there was a time when there was emergency and there were operations and there were surgeries. And the population of India was, I'm not an expert, but probably about 60% of what it is now. And maybe even 50%. And we were going mad over controlling population. And today we are not talking about it. And even China has allowed a third child, if you read recently. And for a very long, China had a one-child principle, and then they had probably two. I missed the two part, but I've read the three part recently. So I mean, we're all adding to the burden of the population on the planet, and we're all going to use gizmos and gadgets and laptops and smartphones, and there is prosperity. So the only person who is not adding to the burden of the planet is somebody who's living in the forest and making a sustainable ecosystem for himself or herself. So what is to be done? I think what can be done is temperance or moderation. Moderation is the key. Now, China started something very innovative. I don't know why I'm giving China examples today. They're not in fashion, obviously. But the point is that there was this farman which came from the government. And that was that all air conditioning will be at 26 degrees and not below that. And you don't need to wear your tie and your suit to work. Anyway, Kunal doesn't wear a tie or a suit to work. I've seen him. So the point being that you can dress as you like and you can work as you like, but your energy consumption and your carbon footprint is much better if you are definitely using a higher temperature of AC. And you go to any Sarkari building or office in Chandigarh or Delhi, anywhere, or even on the train, and they will kill you with the cold. I mean, they will kill you with the kind of that they create that ambience over there. So they're overusing air conditioning. So I think it's an attitudinal problem as well. The same resources, the same population, the same countries, the same governments, we can do twice as much better, or maybe even 10 times better than we are doing for now. So that's my opening remark. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Vivek. Makes sense and very helpful. And I think the analogy of the caveman to today's energy burn is very relevant. Of course, caveman burning wood is different from us cutting the Amazon forest now. We are. It's the scale is very different, and the impact is very different, and we are clearly witnessing it in climate change and many other things. And as I say that we might be the first generation to witness the results of our actions in form of climate change, and we might be one of the last generations to do something about it, because obviously these changes happen over since industrialization a few hundreds of years ago to now, and they are getting worse and worse. And last 2 decades are classic examples that so many natural disasters are a way of nature saying it's out of harmony. Samir and I were discussing earlier. It will reach equilibrium. It will speak out. It's like our bodies. It starts showing some symptoms. Sometimes it's too late. Sometimes it's not. So hoping we can solve it and we can come up with some better solutions. I'll give another example, like you mentioned about China. Real example in Paris. I don't know if any of you guys know that I was in Paris last year before COVID. In the summer, the temperature has started hitting 44 degrees, and the French government has said that nobody can have air conditioners in their houses, because they believe that more you take air conditioners, more carbon house gases do they leave. I forget the name, the fluorocarbons or something, and more it leads to green climate. Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. So more those gases are left behind as a carbon footprint, and more the environment gets hotter or the climate gets hotter. So for them to stay at 44 and not get to 46 by deploying and putting more air conditioners is a solution. I mean, it may or may not work. Parisian people hate it, right? Short-term views. Everyone, we sort of live in short terms. We are thinking that, okay, for next 5-10 years, one quarter to quarter, like corporates, or year to year. Rarely people zoom back, think for humanity. Historians do a good job at it, maybe some of them. But really we think our impact, not just today, me ordering a coffee from Zomato up before this, or, how much impact it will have in the decades to follow. So of course it's a very interesting perspective, and thanks for bringing it out. So I'll move to the next point. The next point I want to bring, which Vivek, you touched upon, is that how did we get here? Why and how did we get here? Because before we talk about maybe some solutions and some problems, I think let's look at how did we get here. And one of the points we touched upon earlier in our conversation was consumerism, that we're all consuming more. We are more humans consuming more. And there's a big philosophy behind that. Capitalism is probably arguably the system behind which leads us to consumerism, and which only functions when there are more people to consume. So you can sell more, build more, sell more, and make them want more as well. So I want to maybe bring in Samir for first, if that is okay. So Samir, do you want to talk about how did we get here? Where does it start? This scale of unsustainability practices, etc.
So let me make an attempt. So basically, see one of the things I want to bring in the concept of evolution here, right? So if you see, just make a distinction between species which are pre-human, which are animals or plants or birds, right? If you see the way they functioned millions of years ago and the way they function today, exactly the same, right? So there is no change in how they are bound, where they live, how they eat, right? It's a constant thing. But with humans, we also started just like the animals in the jungle, right? But we have had the capacity to look at our own environment, realize the potential that we can do something different with the environment, and start building rudimentary tools in the jungle as they came in, and then we have become more and more sophisticated as a society, right? And somewhere, and obviously that human nature, so there was that was a period of evolution, right? We were able to control more, we were able to learn more, we were able to know more, we collect our knowledge, we pass it on to our young, right? So that was one era. But I think some point came where there was this another urge which came up, which was to basically to have more power. So one person wants to have power over more people, right? So, it might have started at the tribal level and then it became bigger. But from my history, my knowledge, I know that if you look at religion, as popularly known today, and religion's impact has reduced over a period of time, but still, if you can see all religions which are fixed, they are giving a set of rules to live and how to think to all humanity. So anybody who has been trained by religion, right, will basically what does training do? The training stunts your evolution. It teaches you certain ways to think about life, which basically put blinders around your head. And this is true to all fixed religions. I'm not, I mean, no good or bad. I mean, all of them, they do the same thing. Why? Because if people don't think more, they will respond to certain given commands. They're easy to control. This is pre-industrial era, right? Industrial era has simply replaced or added, actually, I would say, religion still exists, but education and capitalism, like the manipulative capitalism, right? Today, also, if you see, I mean, many people, at least in the West, in India, are growing up non-religious, like largely, but they are being programmed by the education system, by the schools. So, what is happening is we have become humanity which is not really evolving. And so we basically, though, a rabbit doesn't evolve because it doesn't have a potential to evolve, right? But the humans are not evolving. I mean, I'm not saying average evolution, because we are trapped in a system which is not letting us evolve. And even the people who run the system, by the way, are trapped as much. So we can't say that the people who run education or run religion are evolving. So we are in a evolutionary cul-de-sac, as they call it, right? So we have hit a point, and all the problems which we are experiencing due to unsustainability, including conflicts in the world, are part of this issue, which will only break when humanity or more number of humanity becomes free thinker, becomes evolutionary. And I personally think one of the tools which is going to enable this is internet. Internet is basically, so the internet is also 80% of internet maybe mainstream today, right? Facebook or Twitter or, but 20% of internet, 50% is still independent, right? So I think what we need, and it will happen, I mean, the fact that we have reached a dead end as humanity in our current evolutionary curve, to me means that a new curve is opening, right? And that evolution, I reached that point by myself at the age of 35. We talk about Morpheus and how popular and whatever it was, but at the age of 35, I had already done Morpheus and it was quite popular. And that is when, through some experiences, I had a chance to know that there is also, so if you look at me, right, I can see physically outside through my sense. So the whole world outside, I can live in it and I can understand and I can do commerce with it, science with it. And that's what I did for 35 years. But suddenly somebody told me, hey, there is also a world inside of you. Have you ever looked inside and see what can be done? So that shift, when I looked inside, I realized that I was only looking at half the world. So I think the key to evolution is inside. And I do believe, and in my experience, more and more people are turning inwards. Entrepreneurs, leaders, pioneers, normal people. And I think, to me, that is where the solution lies. And also, it's a collective problem. Unsustainability is a collective problem, right? No 5 people or 100 people can stop using cars. Just like COVID, right? I mean, like everybody has to take a vaccine, right? So I think maybe we are getting trained that globally, collectively, there has to be some ideas which have to catch on and see some, that's what I feel. So it's really evolutionary. It can be called an evolutionary crisis. It's also an evolutionary opportunity.
Right. Thanks, Amir. Very well highlighted the point. If I may add a couple of things there. One is very important for all of us that we look inside ourselves as well when we look outside. Unfortunately, we are very disconnected from ourselves. The screen times, there's so much engaging world outside, and consumerism drives it, that there's so much dopamine being released in our minds that we forget to look inwards. And the moment we start looking inwards, and there's a simple process for it, just find time for yourself, do meditation, do whatever, spend time with yourself, just start thinking. And as somebody was telling me a few days ago, it's like most of us search beyond wealth and some purposes or higher purpose, as we call it. Most of us search for peace, contentment, etc., and it's never outside. That is one of the things which is like saying you lose something in your house, but in your house there's no electricity, there's no light for some reason. It's dark, it's night, and power cut is there. And you start looking for it outside the house because there is light. You will never find it. The peace, the contentment, the satisfaction will never be found outside. It has to be within your own mind, your own self. You just need to enlighten yourself. Somehow find time for it, find space for it. So very spiritual and interesting thought that's been brought. And secondly, I think going back to the history and evolution, I think I would just like to add one more point before I take this discussion with Vivek, that I feel in terms of evolution, so there was a big tribal era which lasted tens of thousands of years ago, hunters and gatherers and everything. But someday someone sometimes said, marked a boundary in an area and said, this is mine. This land is mine, this area is mine, this cattle is mine, this person is mine, this tribe is mine, this spouse is mine, etc. That's when started the process of private ownership, which we took for granted, and that has led to the full evolution since that kingdom, agriculture evolution to industrial to capitalism today, where just people want to own, and they somehow feel we're not as connected with each other as we are. I think we are way more connected with each other than we appreciate. We need to learn that. All of us are made of, part of 4 billion years of evolution. We've not been on the planet more than a few 100,000 years. If we just talk about human species, Homo sapiens as a species. And COVID, as we are saying, has proven it that you can't just say that if I stay home, I'll be fine. You won't be fine. You have to go out. Man is a social animal, right? We want to go out. We need everyone to be vaccinated. Now, America is also doing, for a change, the first time, something that they are taking care of the world in order to take care of themselves. It's not that they want to necessarily do it, right? So it's a very interesting problem, and maybe COVID has brought us to this dead end sort of where we need to take a turn or overcome it or jump it through and something, and where we realize the value of connectedness, value of oneness, value of humanity, spirituality, etc. So very interesting. Thanks, Amir. So Vivek, if I can pass the same discussion to you, adding on or maybe bringing some different perspectives. How did we get here to this unsustainability? What led to it before we talk about maybe some COVID impact and then some solutions?
Yeah, very interesting, actually, very, very interesting discussion. You called it a dead end and Samir called it a cul-de-sac. I think you're absolutely right. We have reached a point where we need to take decisions, where we need to turn right or left or somewhere. And we've reached a point in history where our recklessness has led to the present problems. At a spiritual level, which also you brought in very beautifully, it's an amazing discussion that way. It is said that mass karma has led to COVID, and it had to happen because mankind was to be penalized for its own disastrous actions. We need not, or we may believe in such things, but the point is that if we look at our report card for the last 50 years, and you said what has led to this, we haven't come out with outstanding colors at all. I mean, we basically have developed the world in a manner that is mind-boggling. And we never thought we'll do video calls. We used to imagine them perhaps as kids. We can imagine wherever imagination of mankind goes, and you have been talking about artificial intelligence, Kunal, and you. And wherever imagination goes, development probably reaches that place sometime or the other. So whatever we imagined in our childhood is taking place now. But we having said that, we have also destroyed a lot of things like the Amazon forest you mentioned, rivers, water channels. Floods are causing problems in places where they never caused problems before, where traditionally there is never so much rain or whatever. So we have not really covered ourselves with glory, as I put it in one of my articles as well, that we have been reckless. And we've been reckless because not only of consumerism or capitalism, it's just a race to succeed. The countries are at fault. So I would say governments and countries are largely at fault for what has happened. And we know that westernized or industrialized countries like the US contribute much, much more to the carbon footprint and problems than countries like India and Asian countries. And they have, to a large extent, destroyed a lot of the environment. And it's a very happy sign that the US has joined the Global Climate Agreement once again. Otherwise, for 4 years, they were living in the dark ages in many ways. And we really lost it over there. But the point is that the US, as you say, has to lead the world in vaccination and various things. But in sustainability, particularly, it has to lead the world. And countries like India and China have to do their bit as well, even if they're not contributing that much. So China is a very mechanized, automated, industrialized country today. India is still not.
India is still not. But India, for example, through great leadership, which focuses on environment as one of the key primary goals, when has any leader talked about it with any great sense of urgency? Or any leader of any country, when have they talked to the population of the country about environment? It's one of the priorities which is 11th or 12th in their list. So I think that the way forward is for governments and countries and industry and academia to come together. And people at the individual level can only do so much, but they must do their bit. I have been talking about individuals who have been. Plantation is a great activity. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't take hardly any effort. And planting one tree every day or every week or every month or whatever you can do as an individual, just go ahead and do it. Cleaning up the environment, saving water, and water is wasted like anything in a country like India as well. I mean, we don't treasure it as much as we should because we haven't deserved it. In a city like Chandigarh, we are spoiled. I mean, in Mumbai, people wake up at 3:30 in the morning to fill up their water tanks at times. Maybe it's not so bad now, but it has been. So I think it is a priority which is lacking. And when you talk of spirituality, it gives all the answers. So the inner voice has the answers. I mean, why are we running so fast when life is short? When life is not going to allow us to carry all our material goods to the next world. We have to find that success within. We have to find that happiness, contentment within. So how many cars do I need? And how big a car do I need? So we need to question ourselves in that, introspect, analyze, and find out whether our acts as a race or as a community or as a society or as a globe are in the interests of the future. You look at the children of today. They are proliferating. As I said, the population is huge. And they're all going to be requiring houses and cars and things in the future. So we are not doing any favor to the future by recklessness. And even now, if there are countries, communities, industries which are not adopting the latest environment protection norms or guidelines or equipment or whatever they have to do, then they're really, harming humanity. So I think industry has a great role to play. I was posted in Panchkula, as you know, a few years ago, and there is this huge poultry industry, and there have been problems of flies, and there have been problems of pollution, and it is because the industry of that sector was not investing in environment protection equipment because they had to spend money on that, and it would cut into their costs, cut into their profits. So we had to compel them to do that, and many of them took the lead, of course. And that reduced pollution, reduced the number of flies, and reduced malpractices. And so therefore it is a willpower of communities and societies and countries. I think global leadership and national leadership and state leadership needs to talk about it more. I think discussions like this need to reach the right quarters. Maybe a report on this discussion can be written out and sent to the government, and government likes to receive letters and put them on files. So we can do that. So just joking. So you can send emails. Emails also will, Samir will say that even sending an email will add to the pollution, but I guess, and he's right. Using the internet is obviously going to, but then printing paper and sending voluminous documents as used to be done was obviously worse, and it was adding to the problems of the world. So I think each of us needs to have environment protection in our priority. That is the key. It has to be one of the top things that matter to us. Only then we'll make a difference.
Sure. Thanks, Vivek. Very well said. Very well put. So I think we'll take you up on that, somehow passing the report of this to the relevant people in the governments, administrations, if possible. Happy to share whatever little we know. It's just a discussion, and I'm sure, as you said, imaginations lead to thoughts, thought leads to ideas, and if ideas are spread, maybe somebody executes, right? And I think one of the interesting things is that, for me, we should not feel that there is one superhero who will come and save the world. There is not one person, one group, one organization, one country, one institution that can do it.
somebody else.
Somebody, it's not always somebody else. It's not a Hollywood movie where Tom Cruise will come, or Indian movie where Salman Khan will come, or whoever for that matter. I think eventually we all need to come together. We all play a role in coming to this problem. We should all become more aware, try to solve it at our level, and every little helps. Every little will go a long way. But in grand scheme of things, besides government and corporates who have to do their bit, and they do try to do their bits, or at least claim they do. Sometimes they do go beyond the lip service, sometimes they don't. But I think I would like to bring Samir in if he can talk about if Samir can talk about how the entrepreneurs can solve this problem. So Samir and I are ourselves entrepreneurs. We run in investment forums and stuff. We've invested in startups together and otherwise, and so we are very pro entrepreneurs as such. So we'll bring some startup ideas. We believe that is also one community that can and should play its role. Author is actually built around that. Eventually, that's what we want the ideas to lead to: solvable, scalable business solutions coming from entrepreneurs. So I'd like Samir to talk about how entrepreneurs can solve this problem. How could they be inspired? What they need to do? Why they can do it? What do you think should be the process?
See, basically, again, I have no great understanding of how governments function. I have just been an entrepreneur all my life, but I feel from far away that they are dealing with a lot more complexity and frameworks than entrepreneurs. Right? Entrepreneurs are really, to a large extent, their own masters. They can set their own direction. Right? So I feel that entrepreneurs have the luxury or the responsibility which allows them to move much faster. Because see, if you see unsustainability, right? What contributes? The kind of vehicles we run, the kind of aircrafts we run, the kind of phones we use, the kind of devices we use. Who sells them? Entrepreneurs. Who made them? Entrepreneurs, right? So basically, like every product has so many lakhs and million units being sold, right? And that product has a certain formula, a certain blueprint which is being used to create the product, right? So now that blueprint will have a certain amount of, each unit produced has certain unsustainability. Multiply by the number of times you are selling. So I think in startups there is an opportunity with also increased awareness. Like I just read about a startup getting funded in the Silicon Valley, $2.3 billion to make sustainable diapers. So these are diapers made out of organic cotton. It's a startup idea, a market which has been traditionally dominated by Johnson & Johnson and very large players, right? So they have, and now the private industry has come, investors have come to give them the money. Now, this startup may or may not become the big company, but they can inspire the race to sustainability. Recently, I think HLL announced that they are switching to sustainable toothpaste tubes. Okay, it's not that they couldn't do it before, but environment and atmosphere is getting created, which is. I feel basically personally, an HLL can decide, it's a private company, right, to switch over. So I personally, because I've spent 20 years in the startup world, I feel there is a big opportunity for entrepreneurs to look into this and see how can they contribute to sustainability. Look at it in ways to create solutions which basically become alternatives. Sometimes you will find actually there is a cheaper solution and it is sustainable. It's not always economics. Just that people have got used to it. As an average consumer, I don't have a choice. Even if I have a small child and I need a diaper, right? If the market doesn't have anything, what will I buy? If the market has a product or 5 products, at least have an option to buy, right? So then the common man or the aware consumers can start buying. I feel startups globally can make a big difference, and I think they are making a difference. I'm very much very hopeful that we are seeing. I personally see that change starting to come into sustainability at the level of startups and even big tech companies, that they are moving basically more sustainable, and I hope more power to them.
Sure, thanks. May I request all the guests to go on mute, please? If you are not on mute, please go on mute, if you don't mind. Thank you. Yeah, of course, I think there are some inspiring ideas like that which have been out there. I'm not sure if you are aware of called Arvind Eye Care as an example. Arvind Eye Care is a very good social business which scales, which does millions of eye operations. They don't charge their patients at all. You pay if you want, if you don't, you don't. But in order to make this process sustainable for them, they ended up improving their process of operations, the underlying cost of the underlying eye lenses, etc., so low that they still make money. You can make money and you can cause a big difference. You can bring eyesight to millions of people. You can bring dignity in their lives. Still be a profitable business. You don't need to always overcharge or always compete in the typical capitalistic world. So I think as entrepreneurs, there are some very successful examples out there. We just hope that many more will replicate some such ideas. And the best thing about startup businesses is that they scale. NGOs have a problem. They don't scale beyond the local community. They do great work, but they're dependent on funds. They don't scale as well as some big startups can, hopefully. So that's great. I think I want to bring to the last topic, which is around the increased impact of COVID on sustainability. So Vivek, if I can come to you first, what are the increased problems, augmented, further scaled up problems that we are feeling or seeing or witnessing, which have come due to COVID? Of course, there are some silver linings. Of course, there are some life challenges which we all know of. But besides that, in terms of our general sustainability, how has that gotten worse, if at all, or how has that gotten better, if at all? What do you feel?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. We are at a crisis, no doubt. We are at a point in history where we are being tested very severely. And our healthcare and education facilities have been shown up. Why I say education at the same time is because a highly educated country is being shown and proven to be more adept at following norms and rules and paradigms which will keep them safer. And therefore, countries which are very developed are tackling the virus better. Healthcare has been grossly under budgeted in countries like India, which are poor, of course. But why 2%? Why only 1.9% of the budget for healthcare? And abysmally low for education as well. Whereas the US has always been spending about 15 to 16% on healthcare. And this is something which is a great paradox. So now we've been shown up. We don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough nursing professionals, we don't have enough equipment, and our basic health facilities are being totally shattered and tested. So I think the worst is hopefully over. This second wave was really crippling, and really the tsunami was the right word that somebody coined. But we have been tested, and now we need to be sustainable in our approach towards healthcare going forward. Because health is wealth, and without health, what will mankind do in future? So if populations are going to be crippled or wiped out because of viruses, then there's no point in having all this development and all the progress that we're making. So I think the first thing is to focus on healthcare. The second thing is to focus on immunity. And sustainability also means the sustainability of humankind. And therefore we are, the habits which are crippling our health, like lifestyle diseases, as you know, with blood pressure and diabetes and things, which have cropped up and increased in the last decades. And because India never had these kinds of problems, because Indians never ate burgers before, and they never sat before television before. And I really don't understand how an American population can remain healthy and fit with the kind of diet that they have. There was a comparison of diets between Germany, India, US, and perhaps China or Japan. And what a family eats in a week. I wonder if you remember that image, which was a comparative image of a dining table full of what they eat in a week. And the American diet is just, it's mind-boggling. And what kind of coke and what kinds of, the preservatives and what all they eat. So they're still fit and fine, which is a testimony to their otherwise good quality of life. So I think as human beings, we need to rethink our own sustainability, first of all. That are our lives healthy lives? Are we balancing body, mind and soul? You did talk of spirituality. Are we focusing too much on materialism and consumerism? And then are we stressing out ourselves? Which is also a very key point. I've written on it today. It should appear tomorrow. that the stress and the anxiety and the mental illness which is being caused by COVID is worse probably in the long run than even the numbers of people passing away, unfortunately. And at a global level, I think COVID is going to cause rethinking. Definitely, it is already causing rethinking. I think priorities will change. Spending on things which really matter should increase, and countries need to be less reckless with their industrial mechanization, cutting of forests, and destroying natural climates. And if you look at habitats, natural habitats, and glaciers and icebergs which are melting, it's criminal almost. And we know that animal life and vegetable life and insects and birds have been impacted so much. We've all been talking about the chidiya or the sparrow vanishing for several years, and now I believe it's made an appearance, and I've also seen it around in a bit. We know how much the environment improved when COVID enforced lockdowns last year, and the skies were bluer than ever. Even this year, I think during this lockdown again they become bluer, even though this has not really been a complete lockdown. So I think we have to really seriously rethink our strategy as a population, as a world, as a community, and going forward we need to be very sensible. We need to be very sensible indeed, and we need to ensure equitable distribution of wealth and facilities also, because we still have people who are so poor and they can't really look after themselves at all. No basic health care or water or sanitation. So I think good leadership is needed, Kunal, as always, and that brings me to my favorite topic, which I'll close with. I mean, leadership is men and women who are committed to their cause, to their community, to their people they are leading, and bringing out the best in them. We don't prepare leaders in any of our schools and colleges. They just happen by tukkas, the ye ban gaya, ye nahi ban gaya. So we have to prepare leaders for the future. I think in every sector, if we prepare leaders for environment protection, for agriculture, for industry, for education, for healthcare, prepare leadership with common leadership skill as well as specialized skills in all sectors, then that will help. So I think it's a little out of scope of this discussion, but I think it's relevant, so I thought I'll mention that. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Vivek. Very well covered. Very, very relevant points. Before I pass on to Sameer for his concluding remarks, I think I would like to add on a couple of things you had mentioned. One is that, of course, we are not preparing leaders. You're right. If you find there are ways in which we can bring all the problems down to lack of proper education. The education should not just be cramming, learning math, science, and self-exploring. We should appreciate art, science, sports, many other things, humanities, history, way more than we do, especially in countries like India. So clearly, education system has not improved, and as you rightly pointed out, our investments into that has not been great. It's 1%, 2%. The countries will never grow. If you keep putting 30% on railways, 35% on defense, and 1-2% in healthcare and education, the outcome is ahead of us. We are clearly seeing what's happened in the last few decades. It's a big problem. Secondly, just to emphasize on the point you made that we need to prepare leaders, I think one of the things we lack is genuine moral education. Genuine morals being taught to kids when they are born, brought up, what is the right way of living. And I've learned about some examples from Singapore and Japan where the education systems are so strong that between 4 to 7 years, they are just taught the morals. They're just given the problems that this is a choice, what do you choose? Why you choose that? Why it may be wrong? Why don't you understand its repercussions? How to think rather than what to think. We force people to learn what to think. 2 plus 2 is 4. But why does it matter? Why should you learn that? So the moral education, the morals, collectively, if they come back in fashion, I think many of these problems could be solved. Many things could get even better. That's one example I want to give. And also in Singapore and Japan, both again, top engineers, top professionals who come out of the education system actually choose to go for government jobs. They don't go for private jobs at all. Here you will see most IIT guys will go for the Microsoft job because it pays the most. But in those countries, in some of those countries as examples, their commitment their interest, their inner motivation to serve the rest of the people, to help with the public policy, cause impact, lead impact, improve systems is so strong. That here we struggle with, behind, besides IAS and some other such services processes. I think generally there is lack of talent in the bureaucracy beyond a certain number. So certainly, I think good education, moral education can really help a lot. Definitely agree with all the things you said. I'd like Sameer to come in and help with the concluding remarks from his side around how COVID has impacted it, how it's gotten bad or worse or good, or whatever perspectives he feels may come out of this, because there's always silver lining on the other side as well. So Sameer, over to you.
So I'm just going to kind of go back to my earlier point of evolution, right? So if you look at Homo sapiens as a race, so I think the evolution of Homo sapiens is obviously, one is the index of development of your mind, which creates solution, which might create. So we have what we call as developed human beings, not developed countries, are probably people who have a very highly developed mind. They are well educated. They are in a profession which is at the top, and they obviously materially well off. Right? So I think that's the highest Homo sapiens can do. Right now, there are a certain percentage of Homo sapiens which have reached it, and there's a lot which is behind. Right, so we are one progress is how to bring the rest into being well off materially, and then of course you have to have material well-being, and then the mind develops. Right. So, but I think what is happening is the ones who have reach the highest Homo sapiens development are also getting stuck with. So there's a traffic jam at that level, right? And more people are coming in, getting stuck over there, right? So what is COVID, right? COVID is saying, the people who are the most advanced, let's say scientists or healthcare people, policy people, they are all stuck. Everybody is at a loss, right? Lockdown is the only solution we have, right? So basically, to me, the problems which we are facing today are clearly inviting us to go beyond. And there are people who use another word which is called Homo spiritualus. So there is another race which will have a very different capacity. Einstein says, like the problems created by a level of mind cannot be solved at the same level. You have to go beyond that level, right? So I personally feel that, again, it could be just my personal view, that I think this inner process of inner growth, everybody has to, not everybody, but people who have reached a certain point who are looking for ways to go forward should really make this also part of their daily diet or daily routine, not to ignore anything else in life, but also kind of add a new thing, new dimension, of inner dimension, because that is what will help them break through, and then be able to find new solutions, new perspectives. I think that's what that's my view. I look at, I was telling some people that today we can say arguably, be controversial, but the secular nations of the world are probably relatively better than the non-secular nations. Right? That's what, but because they are trying to have this equal thing, I think the future is, we're talking about, personally I feel like China is atheist nation, you can call it. It's not a secular nation. Right? But I personally feel, we'll see spiritual nations, like where, because what is spirituality, where your identity is that you are a human being, you're a human consciousness. That is your primary identity. It is not the color of your skin. It is not your nationality. It is not your religion, right? So we will see companies. So basically, I think humanity needs to find a common ground. I think many people across the world are actually reaching that point, and the internet is allowing them to collaborate. So I personally feel that we will see more and more that mindset getting into. So there will be people who will run governments from that perspective, who will run startups, who will run societies, and they'll bring that change. So spirituality getting into the mainstream fabric of life. Currently, I think it's kind of a side thing. People go to spirituality when they're very stressed, but kind of, and not the, again, not the religious spirituality. Spirituality, which is one spirituality for humankind. The method can be, anybody can figure out their own method. So to me, we need to, we are on a, as I said, evolutionary crisis and evolutionary opportunity. This crisis, and COVID is one of those forces of nature to push us to grow. If we don't grow, the cycle will repeat. More infections, more similar problems will come unless humanity makes a growth. So I think we are ready for a next level of leap. Human potential evolutionary potential is probably 100x more than where we are today. Okay, we just can't look backward and say, okay, I have come so far from the caveman. Great, but I think we can go way more in future. I think that's what we need to kind of.
And yeah, sure. Thanks, Amit. And in a more sustainable way, we can go forward. It need not be so non-inclusive.
No, absolutely not. Everybody should.
So if I can just add a couple of points to that, very interesting, Sumit, thanks. I think one, I used to have something in my bucket list. One was to wake up in a wrong country, and I'm going on a lighter note here. And the second was to start a new nation. So just so you know, you can start a new nation. Google this up. There is a full Wikipedia page how you can do it. And just adding on to Sameer's example, so Sameer and I both, I'm just new to following Aurobindo's philosophy. And they had, following Aurobindo's philosophy, they have founded something called Auroville, which is meant to be a global melting pot of human consciousness, human consciousness that gets together without any nationality, religion, caste, color, creed, any discrimination. There are about 4,000-5,000 people living in Auroville. A great experiment that is happening in south of India near Pondicherry. So I encourage you guys to go there, check it out if you haven't yet. They have their own way of living. They're coming up with newer things. They're just letting go of all the baggage that we bring, that I'm Hindu, I'm Indian, I'm American, I'm Chinese, I'm whatever, right? They're letting go of all the baggage and trying to come together more as humans and hopefully create some, leapfrog away from the current problems and maybe create a model society for the future. Who knows? Maybe, one of the things we debate sometimes in the company where I work, uTrade, is what if we have to restart the society on Mars? We're talking about Earther here, Earther-led initiative. Maybe we need a Mars initiative too. What would we change? And that's a massive, interesting debate. We've had some great thoughts from about 100 people who work in uTrade, and they just came up with brilliant ideas. Just crowdsourcing I found very powerful, personally. Big believer in that, big believer of Wikipedia, big believer of many such initiatives. And I think it's very helpful. All of us can come together on such platforms. So in the interest of time, guys, I would like to conclude here. There are lots of follow-ons from here. We'll definitely make sure it's a monthly event at the very least from Earther. So we'll invite all of you who attended today, and please spread the word if you like it. There should be video recording at the end. We'll post to you if you want to spread it. And for anyone who missed it, if you have any questions, please raise. We are happy to connect. We have a question and answer section on earther.org. Please go on the website, please sign up and stay connected. And I would really like to thank Vivek and Sameer from the bottom of my heart for bringing such great perspectives. I think I interact with you on many fronts, and it's always encouraging, and there's lots to learn and lots to share and a lot of constructive ideas, which I hope our audience today would have liked, and maybe we can spread the word and get this to the government somehow. Maybe get some neurons kicking in the 80 billion neurons we all have, So would really like to thank Vivek. Any concluding remarks from you?
Thank you so much, Kunal. It's been a wonderful discussion, really stimulating. And Sameer also, great ideas from spirituality. I can see the thought process being very mature and very constructive and very deep. So a wonderful discussion, really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks, guys. We'll conclude the session now. Thanks a lot for your time. I hope it was worth your 1 hour, and stay connected. We are all co-authors in this earther.org, and let's connect and make more happen. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks.